Back when I first dipped my toes into the sailing world, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd watch every YouTube video I could find, read the forums, even lurked in Facebook groups, hoping to find that one golden thread that would make everything click. But you know what? A lot of the stuff I really needed to know, nobody was talking about. Maybe because it's too obvious to seasoned sailors, or maybe because nobody wants to admit how many times they learned the hard way. So this list? This is for you and the dreamers, the planners, the soon-to-be liveaboards, weekend warriors, and salty souls getting ready to cut the lines. These are the 20 things I truly wish someone had pulled me aside and told me before I set off cruising on a sailboat. Not the textbook stuff, but the real-world lessons that actually make a difference out there. So grab a drink, settle in, and let's talk through the good, the bad, and the why didn't anyone warn me parts of life on the water. When I first started sailing, I thought reefing was something you only did when the sky turned black and the wind howled like a freight train. Truth is, if you're waiting for all hell to break loose before you reef, you've already waited too long. One of the best habits I developed early on was reefing not out of fear, but out of comfort. A well-timed reef can turn a sketchy sail into a smooth ride, especially if you're sailing with family or friends who aren't used to being bounced around. Early reefing reduces stress on your sails, your rig, and your crew, and honestly, the boat just handles better. You'll find that you actually gain speed and control in stronger wind once you tuck a reef in. It's about staying ahead of the weather, not reacting to it. I can't count the number of times I told myself I should have reefed an hour ago. So now, when I start thinking maybe I should reef, that's my cue. I reef. Do it before you need to, and your boat and your nerves will thank you. Nobody tells you just how much of your cruising life revolves around your dinghy until you're actually living it. It's not just a cute accessory hanging off the back of your boat. It's your car, your grocery getter, your water taxi, and your emergency escape pod all rolled into one. That's why making sure it's easy to launch and retrieve is a game changer. Early on, I had a dinghy setup that required about 20 minutes of sweaty work just to get the thing in the water. Trust me, when you're tired or the weather's getting ugly, that's the last thing you want. I learned real quick that davits or a simple hoist system can save your back and your sanity. Inflatable or hard shell, big or small, it doesn't matter as much as how quickly and safely you can get it launched. If deploying your dinghy is a hassle, you'll find yourself hesitating to go ashore or avoiding places where you really should drop anchor and explore. Make your dinghy setup user-friendly, and it'll reward you every single day. When I first looked into getting a boat, I assumed the sailing license courses would teach me everything I needed to know, like driving school, but for boats. I couldn't have been more wrong. Those licenses, especially in Europe, are mostly about regulations and safety protocols, not hands-on sailing skills. You'll spend hours learning navigation theory, right-of-way rules, and maybe how to tie a few knots, but you'll barely touch a helm, and no one's showing you how to anchor in a busy cove, dock in high wind, or handle a diesel engine that refuses to start. That stuff, you have to learn it the hard way, by doing it. The courses are useful for meeting legal requirements, sure, but don't expect to come out a confident sailor just because you passed a test. I walked off with a certificate in my hand and absolutely no clue how to park my boat. Experience is the real teacher out here, not the classroom. So, if you're stressing about getting your license before you've ever set foot on a boat, don't. What you really need is time on the water and someone patient to show you the ropes. Sailing doesn't reward the loudest, strongest, or most technically skilled. It rewards the calmest. Out there, things go sideways all the time. The wind shifts. A line gets wrapped around your prop. The anchorage you were counting on is full. It's the folks who can take a breath, adapt, and keep their heads on straight who thrive. When I was starting out, I thought being a good sailor meant knowing everything. Turns out, it means staying calm when everything goes wrong. I've seen cool-headed cruisers fix a jammed furling line with a boat hook and a smile while others panicked and made it worse. Your mindset becomes your most important tool. Being adaptable lets you change plans without feeling defeated. Miss your weather window? Find a cozy bay and make the most of it. Engine? Trouble? Break out the tools and some patience. Every hiccup becomes part of the journey if you let it. Sailing is a mix of preparation and improvisation, but keeping your cool through both is what makes you a real sailor. It's not about avoiding problems, it's about how you handle them. When you finally break away from the dock, you realize that electricity is freedom. Lights, refrigeration, charging your phone, running your autopilot, it all adds up. And if you're not set up to generate power off-grid, you'll end up chasing marinas more than sunsets. I didn't fully appreciate this until I ran out of battery power halfway through a 3-day anchorage. The fridge warmed up, The lights went dim, and I had to ration power like I was on a lunar mission. That was the wake-up call. Investing in a solid solar array and a robust battery bank changed everything. Suddenly, I could stay out as long as the food and water lasted. No more listening to a generator drone or stressing every time I flipped a switch. It's not just about luxury, it's about peace of mind. Even a modest solar setup can do wonders if it's well thought out. So before you buy that shiny new chart plotter, think about your power needs first. A self-sufficient energy setup is one of the best upgrades you can make for a cruising life. When I bought my first boat, I spent way too much time worrying about how it looked. I'd polish the teak, scrub every surface, and stare at color swatches for cushions. Meanwhile, the bilge pump was flaky, the engine barely started, and the navigation lights were hit or miss. It took one nerve-wracking night passage for me to learn what really matters. Functional systems, like steering, anchoring, bilge, and power, aren't optional. They're the bones of your boat. You can sail with ugly curtains, but you can't sail with a jammed rudder or dead starter battery. That doesn't mean your boat has to be a wreck. It just means that form follows function when you're living afloat. Over time, you can tidy things up, refinish, repaint, and make her beautiful. But make sure she's working first. The most gorgeous boat in the anchorage means nothing if it can't leave under its own power. And when you're out there, what you'll really care about is whether your systems keep you safe and comfortable, not whether the deck chairs match. So before you invest in pretty, make sure your essentials are dialed in. That's the difference between a floating condo and a true cruising boat. Before I started sailing, I assumed waves and wind always came together, like they were part of the same package deal. That was a rude awakening. One calm morning, off the coast of Portugal, I set out expecting an easy motor day. The forecast showed 0 wind. What it didn't show was the massive swell from a storm hundreds of miles away. No wind, but 5 meters of rolling ocean had my boat lurching and groaning like a fairground ride. That's when I learned. Swell has a life of its own. It travels vast distances and doesn't care what the wind is doing where you are. And the reverse is true too. You can have 15 knots of a breeze and perfectly flat water, especially behind islands or close to shore where there's no fetch. Learning to read both wind and sea state changed everything for me. I started checking swell forecasts, not just wind, and I stopped getting surprised by conditions. It's also why some passages feel tougher than others even when the wind looks ideal. If you're planning a sail, make sure to know what the sea itself is doing, not just what's blowing across it. I spent way too much time early on worrying about how my boat looked. Was the varnish shiny enough? Did the topsides sparkle? Were people judging my beat-up cockpit cushions? Turns out, no one cares. Absolutely no one. When you're anchored off a gorgeous island, the guy in the $2 million catamaran is just as excited about the sunset as you are in your $10,000 fixer-upper. The ocean doesn't care what your gel coat looks like. Cruisers respect competence, not cosmetics. What really stands out is how well you handle your boat, not whether it's Instagram ready. The people who matter will notice your well-set anchor, your calm docking, or how you help others, not the scratches on your topsides. That was a huge relief, and honestly, it freed me. I stopped chasing perfection and started focusing on safety, comfort, and reliability. And you know what? I started enjoying sailing a whole lot more. Sure, clean up what you can when you can, make her your own, but don't let vanity keep you stuck in the yard for years. Get out there, scuffs and all. The memories you make will outshine any polished job. It took one bad night dragging in a crowded anchorage for me to truly appreciate just how critical a good anchor is. Everything was calm when we set the hook, but sometime after midnight, the wind shifted and so did we, right toward another boat. That's when I realized your anchor isn't just gear, it's your home's foundation. It keeps you safe while you sleep, lets you explore ashore without worry, and gives you peace of mind in remote spots. If you've got an old-school plow anchor that doesn't reset well or struggles in different seabeds, upgrade. Seriously, get a modern, oversized anchor like a Rockna, Vulcan, or Mantis. Yes, they cost more, but the confidence you get from knowing your boat is staying put in mud, sand, or grass is priceless. Pair it with a good chain and enough rode, and you'll sleep like a baby, even in gusty, shifting conditions. Anchoring isn't something to skimp on. It's not an accessory, it's essential. Before you drop cash on fancy electronics or shiny fittings, make sure your anchor setup is bulletproof. It's the one piece of gear that works hardest every single night. At first, I thought having a windlass was just a nice to have, something fancy fancy boats had to make life easier. I figured I'd save money and haul anchor by hand. Big mistake. The first time I had to pull up 20 meters of chain in a hurry, in wind and swell, with the bow bouncing and adrenaline pumping, I understood real fast. A windlass isn't about laziness, it's about safety and control. Anchoring is stressful enough without worrying whether you can even retrieve your hook. And if you ever have to reset in a hurry or pull anchor in the dark, you'll want that windlass humming along, not your back breaking. Plus, a windlass lets you use heavier gear, more chain, a bigger anchor, without worrying about the physical strain. You'll anchor more confidently, stay safer, and avoid injury. Manual systems work, but they're hard on your body, especially long term. If there's one hard truth about cruising, it's that everything breaks. It doesn't matter how new your boat is or how carefully you maintain it, stuff will fail, usually at the worst possible time. I learned that the hard way when a fuel line cracked halfway between islands, and I had nothing to patch it with. Ever since then, I've kept a solid stash of spares and tools aboard, and it's saved my skin more times than I can count. Belts, filters, impellers, hose clamps, fuses, extra line, sealant, duct tape, zip ties, they've all come in handy. And don't forget a proper set of tools, socket wrenches, screwdrivers, a multimeter, even a headlamp for working in tight spaces. Out at sea, or anchored far from a chandlery, being able to fix things yourself is more than just a convenience. It's survival. If you can make even basic repairs, you'll avoid a lot of stress, save a ton of money, and earn serious confidence. Things will break. Expect it. Prepare for it. And take pride into being the kind of sailor who keeps going when the gremlins show up. That toolkit in your locker? It's just as important as your sails. Before I moved aboard full-time, I didn't understand just how essential a dinghy would become. I thought of it as a backup, maybe something to get ashore now and then. But once I started cruising, it quickly became clear. It's not a backup, it's your main vehicle. Every single day, that dinghy takes you from your anchor spot to land, to other boats, to explore coves, to chase sunsets. You'll use it for groceries, fuel runs, repairs, and sometimes even emergencies. If it's a hassle to launch or underpowered, it can seriously limit your freedom. And if it breaks down, you'll feel stranded, even if your main boat is in perfect shape. That's why a good dinghy setup is critical. Make sure it's big enough to handle your needs, has a reliable motor, and is easy to store or hoist. Some cruisers prefer hard shells for durability. Others swear by inflatables for storage. Whatever you choose, treat it like you would your only vehicle back home, because that's what it becomes. I've had days where my dinghy made the difference between isolation and adventure. Take care of it, invest in it, and don't underestimate it. It's your gateway to the world. When I was new to all this, I didn't think much about what kind of engine was in a boat. I figured, if it runs, it's fine. But once I started cruising regularly, I learned just how critical a good inboard diesel is. These engines are absolute workhorses. Reliable, fuel efficient, and designed to keep going in conditions that would rattle most outboards apart. When the wind dies and you've still got to reach an anchorage before dark, the diesel becomes your best friend. It doesn't complain, doesn't burn much fuel, and if you learn to take care of it, it'll run for thousands of hours. That's the beauty of it. Once you understand your engine's quirks and keep up with the maintenance, fuel filters, belts, impellers, oil changes, it becomes a trusted companion. I've been in tight spots where my engine was the only thing standing between me and a bad situation. That's when I realized it's not just a piece of equipment, it's a safety system. So, if you're debating whether to invest in a boat with a solid inboard diesel, let me say this clearly. Do it. A dependable engine gives you range, safety, and serious peace of mind out there. When I was getting ready to cruise, I obsessed over storms. I read every book on storm tactics, bought the strongest gear I could afford, and drilled my rigging like I was heading into the Southern Ocean. That stuff's important, no doubt, but what I didn't realize is that most of your sailing life happens in light to moderate wind. I was so geared up for 30 knots that I forgot to enjoy 10. And when your boat only comes alive in heavy air, you end up missing out on all those beautiful, calm sailing days. That's why preparing for light wind is just as important. Get a drifter, a Code Zero, or even a second-hand Genoa with a fuller cut. Light air gear makes the difference between a lazy motor and a sweet sail in 8 knots. Plus, the sea state is usually gentle, which makes for champagne sailing. Quiet, smooth, and peaceful. I eventually re-rigged my boat for both ends of the spectrum, strong enough for a blow, but sensitive enough for a breeze. And suddenly, I was sailing way more often. So don't just focus on storms. Build your boat and your mindset for fair weather too. That's when cruising is pure magic. If I could give just one piece of advice to anyone dreaming of cruising, it's this: don't wait for perfect. Start with what you can afford and what you can manage. My first cruising boat wasn't big or flashy. It was old, cramped, and had its quirks, but it got me out there, and that's what mattered. The truth is, every day you wait for the perfect boat, you're missing sunsets, quiet anchorages, and the lessons that only come with miles under the keel. Starting small teaches you so much. You learn to be efficient, to prioritize, to sail well rather than rely on gadgets. You gain confidence without the pressure of managing too much boat, and when you do eventually upgrade, you'll know exactly what you need and what you don't. I've met cruisers who've spent years stuck in boat prep limbo, never quite ready. But I've never met someone who regretted starting small and learning by doing. The sea doesn't care how long your waterline is, she just wants to see you show up. So if you've got a boat that floats, some safety gear, and a heart full of curiosity, go. Don't wait for perfect. Go now. When I was shopping for my first cruiser, I remember being terrified by the word osmosis. Every survey report treated it like a death sentence. Blisters on the hull? Must be a disaster, right? Turns out, not so much. Osmosis, those little bubbles that form when water seeps into the outer layers of fiberglass, isn't great, sure, but it's not an emergency either. Boats don't sink from osmosis. What usually sinks a boat is neglect, poor maintenance, or sheer bad luck, not a few blisters below the waterline. I spent weeks and a lot of money trying to fix something that wasn't even affecting performance. What I learned is that you can sail perfectly safely with mild to moderate osmosis for years. Handle it when you have time, when the boat's on the hard, and you're in a position to do a proper job. But don't let it delay your cruising plans. That hull can wait, the ocean can't. If everything else is in good working order, engine, rigging, steering, then slap on some anti-foul and go. Blisters are mostly cosmetic. Don't let fear of osmosis keep you tied to the dock. It's a bump in the fiberglass, not the end of the dream. This question haunted me in my early days. Where can I anchor? I'd look at charts, worry about rules, and second-guess every spot. But here's the truth I learned. That's the wrong question. What you really want to ask is, where can I not anchor? Because outside of marked channels, nature reserves, or restricted areas, you can anchor just about anywhere. If the chart doesn't say no anchoring, and you're not blocking navigation or disturbing protected habitats, you're probably fine. That was a huge mental shift. Suddenly, the world opened up. I wasn't stuck chasing moorings or marinas. I had options. Of course, you still need to check local regulations and understand seabed types. Sand is great, rock and weed not so much, and you want to be mindful of tides, wind shifts, and other boats. But anchoring isn't some dark art. It's mostly common sense and awareness. The first few times feel stressful, but like most things in sailing, it gets easier fast. Just don't let fear stop you from dropping the hook. It's one of the greatest freedoms of cruising, being able to pick a beautiful spot and make it your temporary home. Anchor smart, and you'll love it. The first time I stepped aboard my own boat, the running rigging looked awful. Faded, stained, stiff. I immediately thought, well, time to replace it all. That would have cost me a small fortune. Luckily, a kind old sailor at the yard stopped me. "Throw it in the washing machine," he said. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Turns out, most running rigging can be tossed in a mesh laundry bag or pillowcase and run through a gentle cycle with mild soap. When I pulled those lines out, cleaner, softer, and still strong, I felt like I'd just discovered a secret. Sure, it won't fix damage or chafe, but it will breathe new life into good rope that's just seen too much salt and sun. Now, I wash mine regularly. Just make sure to remove shackles, don't use bleach and hang them to dry fully before stowing. It's a simple, satisfying chore that makes your boat look better and keeps gear performing longer. Don't be too quick to toss out dirty rigging. Often, all it needs is a good bath. In a world where every marine product seems overpriced, a little soap and spin cycle can go a surprisingly long way. When I first started cruising, I focused on the romantic stuff. Trimmed sails, perfect tacks, the boat gliding silently through blue water. That's sailing, right? But after a few seasons, I realized something. Those moments are rare. Most of your challenges and your real seamanship come at low speed, close to other boats, in tight anchorages or marinas. That's where skill counts the most. Docking and anchoring well isn't flashy, but it's what separates the confident cruisers from the stressed-out ones. I've seen beautiful sails ruined by botched approaches. I've watched experienced skippers flub a mooring and turn an easy afternoon into chaos. I've also seen cool-headed sailors dock like a whisper or drop the hook calmly in gusty winds, and that's impressive. Practice slow-speed handling. Learn how your boat behaves in reverse. Work on setting and retrieving your anchor under pressure. These are the moves that matter most. most. They'll save your hull, your pride, and your crew's nerves. It's not about looking good under sail, it's about being in control when it counts. Sail trim can come later. Master the close quarters and you'll feel like a true captain every time you come in, not just when you're cruising with the wind. When I first dreamed of cruising, I pictured endless days of steady wind, sails full, and the engine silent. But real-life cruising isn't a postcard. If you need to be somewhere on time, or even just want to reach a safe anchorage before dark, you're going to motor. A lot. The wind rarely does exactly what you want when you want it. Sometimes there's too little. Other times, it's blowing from the exact direction you're headed. And if you've got a schedule, guests flying in, weather windows, visa restrictions, you'll fire up that diesel way more than you imagined. I used to feel guilty about motoring, like I was somehow doing it wrong. But eventually, I accepted it. Cruising is sailing and motoring. A strong, well-maintained engine is your backup sail, your storm escape route, and your peace of mind when the wind dies at sea. It also lets you punch through currents, get into tight anchorages, and manage long passages when the breeze doesn't show up. So, if you're buying a boat, don't just look at sail performance. Make sure the engine is up to the task. You'll use it more than you think, and be grateful for it every single time. So there you have it. 20 things I wish I'd known before casting off the lines and heading out to sea. Some of these lessons came the hard way. Others were passed on from salty sailors with calloused hands and knowing smiles. And while everyone's journey is a little different, I found that the best advice is usually the simplest. Use what works, fix what breaks, and let go of perfection. Because the truth is, cruising isn't about having the fanciest gear or the prettiest boat. It's about living a life that's just a little wilder, a little freer, and full of moments most people only ever dream about. If you're still on the fence, still chasing that someday boat, let me just say, go. Start small, mess things up, learn as you go, and soak up every sunrise you get to see from your own floating home. The sea doesn't care how ready you feel. It just wants to meet you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you've got your own lessons or stories, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what the ocean has taught you. Until next time, fair winds, calm anchorages, and just enough breeze to keep your soul moving. Cheers.